Hey, good evening. Hi, I'm Kirsty Bentley Taylor. Talking to you back from England now, back in the UK, having been in Thailand last week. It's kind of like one of the things I wanted to talk about today was really some of my observations from Thailand, particularly on the subject of my children, which I don't know whether, everybody else has got that kind of this idea now that kids are so distracted by their lives. We took the kids back to Thailand. They grew up there. We were there for 3 weeks. And it was like a constant fight to be getting them to come off the computer, come off the TV, that sort of thing. The usual fights that we have in the UK with them, but with the added annoyance for me anyway, is that they have this whole beautiful world outside that they could be exploring. And so, yeah, kind of just grated me even more than it does in the UK. And then I began to be kind of really aware of the distraction that the children are experiencing in this generation, it does bother me here. I am very much aware of it, but I sort of began to turn on a little bit more, just become a little bit more aware of what's been going on. As I look around me at the airports, everybody is on their phone or on their tablet, on the planes even, if everyone's just sort of staring at a screen. And one of the things that kind of lodged in my mind that would really concern me about this. Okay, so it's a way of distracting your mind. It's entertainment, but it's also so detrimental to your creative thoughts. If you're watching something the whole time, if you're looking for something the whole time, you're being stimulated. You're not bringing anything into your life. You're not creating anything. You're just being stimulated. You're just absorbing information. This is what I was trying to have this conversation with my son, because he's obsessed with this video game Fortnite, which I think is like a craze that's sweeping the nation at the moment. He's playing with all his friends online. They all link together so they can chat, so it's become this kind of social gaming thing now, which is all about kind of running around this imaginary world and shooting people and building things and shooting people and building things and trying not to get killed as much as I can make out anyway. And I said to him, the only thing that concerns me about it, like, I know that you enjoy to play it. I know that it's social, it's connected with your friends. So I understand that part of it. But what worries me about it is that the hours that you're spending in front of this game, you could be actually imagining your own world, your own game, if you like, which effectively is your life. And when I sort of said that to him, he kind of was like, well, what do you mean imagine it? And I realized that he has no concept of the way that we create our lives daily. And he has no concept of the importance really of imagination. And that is really what I wanted to talk about today, because I spend a lot of time coaching people, asking them to use their imagination, asking them to delve into the dreams that they once had, to discuss the hopes, the paths that they have given themselves over the course of their lives. And when we start out as children, we have this huge creative force, this huge creative and imaginative world that we live in that we're not really even aware of, I don't think. We go into everything with an idea, a vague idea of what it's going to be like. And to fill the void that is known from experience or is recovered from experience, we imagine possibilities. We imagine what it's going to be like. Now, we start this process really, really early. This is why 2-year-olds throw tantrums, because in their minds, other things are going to happen other than what reality will actually provide them with the experience of. They imagine that, if mum's going to get upset, that it's going to be full whack upset. It's going to be, toys are going to be taken away, sweets are going to be taken away, or that sort of thing. If they do one thing wrong, they go straight to the extreme. They don't have the experience, if you like, to necessarily be able to make a judgment on how well mummy might cope with this thing that they've done, for example. I recognize that in my daughters, in my younger kids. I recognize that they will fly straight off the handle into something because in their minds, they're imagining that the consequence to their actions is going to be a lot worse than it probably is. And this is down to experience and stuff like that, but it's also down to their idea, their imaginative mind at that age, because they haven't been beaten down with a sense of reality, with a sense of what is real, what is the likelihood. It's kind of that risk assessment that we begin to build into our lives as we age. As we grow up, we begin to do a lot more risk assessment. And as adults, we're risk assessing all the time. You know, we're looking at whether or not that would be a good investment. We're looking at whether or not that car would be, you know, is going to be the right car for the family. And we're looking at things like whether or not the house is going to be big enough for our needs when we come to buy it, all these sorts of things, as well as, you know, genuine risk assessment, kind of like, you know, what's going to be the odds of me falling off that mountain if I climb it, you know, those sorts of things as well. But it's all about our experience. It all takes us back to our experience, and that's something that kids don't have a lot of. And obviously we all gain it as we grow, but initially we don't have it. So we really fall back on our imagination a lot. And it got me to thinking about what it is that we really gain from having this imaginary sense, this ability to be able to create anything, you know, because the older we get and the more real life gets, the less able I think we are to truly create and imagine a wondrous, wondrous world. There are very few people, those people who can paint and who can, you know, draw and create things in the art world. You know, they're tapping into this source. But when I look around us, the majority of us are still absorbing in. We're still taking on board. We're still switching on the television. We're still looking at the phones, and we're absorbing the information rather than creating and going out there and building the life that we want to live so much. We're kind of taking it on board. I find it with the news in this country, especially. Having lived in Thailand and been in this little bubble, couldn't understand the news. The dialect of the Thai that was being spoken to me was far too fast and like far too kind of quirky for me to be able to grab with my basic Thai. And so I lived in this world of only if I went to look for the information would I find it, which actually was lovely, because now that I'm back in the UK and I understand everything that's going on around me 110%, I recognise that there is a lot of fear mongering going on through the media, that they, you know, I feel like every time I turn on the television, the news that's coming at me is scary, it's barbaric, it's hateful. It makes me believe that this world that we live in you know, is just full of atrocity and hate and horrible things going on. And I know in my logical mind that the only reason that I'm really seeing this side of the world is because that's what's being shown to me. And that's another reason to kind of really begin to snip off away from the absorbing of information and more like the going out and the looking and the creating and the distinguishing what is actually real for yourself rather than just watching what's on the news, watching what's on the television, and you know, or listening to it in the paper, like listening to it on the radio, reading it in the paper, online, whatever, however it is that you get, you know, your up-to-date news for the day. And so I kind of began to think like along the lines of, you know, okay, so how do I imagine it to be if we don't have all this kind of stimulation? If I cut myself off from the news, what do I imagine it to be? And I realized that actually when I was cut off from the news and everything in Thailand, I didn't really think too much about what the world was and how scary it was or is and how much hate there is. I didn't think about those things. I wasn't scared. I would go and I would just do. I would run around the fields and the palm trees and the rubber fields with my dog without thinking about being attacked or raped or murdered or any of those sorts of things that I would in this country, knowing how many of these attacks happen in things like parks and desolate places. So I started, you know, starting to thinking about like, okay, so where does this start from? Like the ability to be able to create your life, how does it start? You know, and I realized that it comes directly from your imagination, the same way it does when you're a kid and you begin to play. You pick something up, maybe you pick up a flower or you pick up a rock or a stick or something like that, and it sparks something in your creative force, in your imagination. And that stick then can become a bow and arrow or a sword or it becomes a crutch for you to walk up mountains with or something like that. And the flower becomes a jewel. It becomes something that, a dress piece that you can put in your hair. It becomes a gift to somebody. You imagine how this thing is going to affect your life and what you can use it for going forward. And then I realized the parallels with that with what I do with my coaching practice. Every time I ask somebody to look at the life that they already have, and when somebody comes to me for life coaching or happiness coaching, holistic happiness coaching, I have to go through with them exactly what it is that they're not happy with, exactly what it is that they're struggling with, and what they would really require the coaching for. How is it that they see their life as now, and what is it that they want to see it as in the future? And a lot of that creates a lot, it requires a lot of creative and imaginative thought, because if they could see where they wanted to go straight away and it was like a direct, clear path, they'd be there already. So investing time into imagining and feeling and living the reality that they want to create is huge. It's about making it a possible. It's about making it some level already of reality. If you can think it, you can create it, right? Einstein said, imagination is everything. It is the preview for life's coming attractions. And I really believe that. I really believe that whatever you can imagine, you can create. I've certainly done it throughout my life. I started traveling when I was 20. And for about 18 months, from just after my 18th birthday, I started thinking about, like, I want to get out in the world, like I'd been brought up in a small village. I knew there was more to life than this small village, and I wanted to get out of it. I loved it. It was my home. I had loads of friends there, my family, but I wanted to see more. I knew there was more out there. I'd watched David Attenborough for years and years, inspiring me with his amazing programs on the natural world. And I wanted to get out and experience it for myself. Looking through books, because we didn't have the internet at the time, going to the library, looking through books, looking at pictures and things, I imagined what this world would be like. I imagined what I might need to take with me. I imagined the pitfalls and the troughs that I would come across. I imagined all those things. I couldn't imagine the reality of it. I couldn't imagine the beauty of it, because I didn't know, I didn't have any kind of base experience on the tropics or anything like that. I was heading off to Asia initially. But those thoughts about the sort of things that I might face while I was out there, they gave rise to a kind of almost a confidence, a confidence in what it was that I would face and how I could prepare myself for it. A confidence in the person that I would become through coming through to myself as all of these experiences, from having these experiences, from going through and living this life that I was imagining. And I felt real excitement. I felt really inspired by the journey that I was on and inspired by the life that I was creating. And it became very easy to create it. What I noticed was that when I spent time thinking about the experience that I would have and imagining what it was going to be like in my mind, new things would drop in, things about the money. How am I going to be able to convert these things? How would I work it out? I would go into the travel agents and find out what the currency was going to be, those sorts of things. And I began to bring the imagination into my reality, the imagined thought into my reality. What I've noticed, having grown up a little bit more now, is that with the stresses and strains of life, that creative thought is really, really dampened. What I noticed when I went back to Thailand this time, just a basic thing, I like to write poetry and I like to write stories. I write stories for the kids yoga classes that I teach. And for about the last 6 months, I've been under quite a lot of stress at home, trying to build my business, trying to manage the children, trying to support my husband, who is now working really, really long hours, and trying to get everything balanced, all the stuff that we have to do, trying to balance it all out. and I felt really, really stressful. And one of the things that I've noticed is that in that stressful period, I can't write. I can't fathom a poem. I can't I can't bring a story. Something that I've never really had too much problem with before when I've tried. And that worried me. Like I kind of thought, well, I've lost that ability. What happened there? I noticed it when I, I noticed it a while ago actually when my nana died, and my dad asked me to write a poem for her funeral. I wasn't going to be there. He knew that I'd written poems. I'd written poems all throughout my life. I wrote one for his 50th birthday. I've written them for my children in their birthday cards. You know, this is something that I've always done. And he said to me, would you write a poem? And I sat down, and for about 3 or 4 days, I tried to pen something. I tried to write something out. Nothing would just come to me as easy as it had come. And what I ended up doing was kind of just getting a blank piece of paper and writing Nana in the middle of it, and then kind of just writing down some odd words that I would associate with Nana. And even that I found hard. And I realized that the stress that I was under at the time was one of the things that was stopping me from doing it. And the pressure that I was putting myself under was also stopping me from being able to really connect in with my heart and connect in with this expressive part of my soul, and be able to write it down. So in the end, when my nana's funeral was coming around, I said to my dad, I had to say to him, I'm sorry, Dad, I can't do it. I can't find it. I can't find that in me anymore. And I'm sorry, you know. And I felt awful. Like I felt really, really bad, especially because of the circumstance of it all. But having since written a couple of stories and come back into it a little bit, recently when I couldn't do it again, I was shocked to be back there. I was kind of like, well, you know, how have I got back here? I'm in a different level. I'm in a different place. How have I come back to this spot of having kind of like a writer's block on it? And when I looked at my life and when I looked at what was going on, I realized that because of all the things that I do, there's no space for creative thought. Because of the fact that I get up at like 5 every morning, I do my yoga, I do my meditation, all those sorts of things. Then I do my lesson planning because I find my mind is at its most relaxed after all that. Then I'm getting up and I'm doing the kids. And the stress begins, you know, they're getting them all up and ready, out to school on time, you know, everything ironed, putting all the breakfast stuff away, getting all that done. You know, it starts the day at a kind of a faster pace than I have been used to. And it means that for about 2 hours after the children have gone, like I get rid of them just before 9 o'clock, they're all safely in school, I get back home, right, okay. For about the next 2 hours, I find it really hard to get into any sort of creative thought process, whether it be, again, for lesson planning for my yoga, or whether it be trying to write stories for the kids' yoga. I've developed this book that I'm hoping to put together. I'm in talks with a girl who's going to be doing the illustration for it at the moment, called On the Adventurous Cat. And it took me 8 weeks of writing like a book for the kids yoga, and you basically section it out and I read it out to the kids, and they there's asanas put through it and all that sort of thing, meditations at the end, breathing practice, all these sorts of things. So I'm, you know, but it took me 8 weeks to write what is essentially six lessons worth of creative writing and creative thought, like a story that will help support their learning. And I did this at a time when I didn't feel very stressed. I was in a very good place actually. And it came quite freely to me, but I was writing a little bit every week. Um, and then I tried to come and sit down and write like a second part of it while we were in England, because I'd already done the first part with the kids here and I wanted to kind of continue it. They loved the character. They were really into all that. That was great. So I wanted to kind of continue on the adventure, but I just couldn't think of any way of doing it. I couldn't think where On the Adventurous Cat would next go. I couldn't think what was next on his agenda, his hit list of, you know, experiences to have. I couldn't really think of the lessons that I wanted to portray through the character either. I just found it really, really hard. And I realized that a lot of the time, one of the things that was frustrating me the most was the constant thoughts of other things that I need to be doing coming in. And so for me, I discovered that stress is actually a real dampener on my creative thought. like a real dampener. I can't connect with my creative thought if I'm really stressed. When we went away to Thailand and I had the 3 weeks off, and there was a little bit of stress there. It's a business that we were dealing with, that sort of thing. But essentially I had like a lovely time teaching and with my family and with our friends over there as well. And I found at the end of that I really had let go of a lot of the tensions that I've been holding from England. And on a plane on the way home, I began to write the next chapter, the next book for On the Adventurous Cat. And I'm about halfway through it. And I'm so desperate to finish it now because I feel like soon all the stress will catch up with me again and I won't be able to continue it. I'll have like kind of writer's block again, and that will be it. That I won't know where I'm going with it. I won't know. I will have lost the thread. I will have lost the imagination. I will have lost that creative thought process that is required to be able to pen a book or a letter or, anything really that you want to create a poem. So I kind of realized that, okay, the stress is a big, big factor. If I want to be creative, if I want to have creative thought, then I need to be in an environment that is open and conducive to that has space for me to be in, that has space for me to think in, that doesn't have draws on my attention and pulls on my time the whole time that I'm there. And Thailand was absolutely fabulous for that. So I began to think again about, okay, so what is it that imagination brings to the table? Now I made a little list down. One of the things that I realized is that imagination for me ignites passion. It sparks a passion for my life. If I begin to imagine a certain way of living, it almost envelops me. It becomes a very possible reality. And I kind of parallel that again with the life coaching, with the fact that, I take my clients into this space where we talk about the dreams that they've had, the life that they dreamed of creating. And I ask them to tell me how it would feel to be living that life. What does that life look like? What does it really look like? Be detailed. The more detailed you are about what things look like, the more real they become, right? If you could almost feel, say you dream about walking along a beach, you can feel the sand between your toes. You can feel the cool breeze. You can almost hear the waves lapping up on the shore. The more detailed you can be, the better off you are. So certainly that passion that was ignited by my creative thought was a huge thing. It's a huge thing that you need passion for your life. You need to have passion for everything that you do. I was talking to a lady today at one of my classes, and she was like, Kirsty, it's so nice to see you every week that you come in. You're happy, you're bubbly, you're on the ball, you're loving it. It's just such a nice change. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I don't have a lot to be sad about. I love my life. I feel very lucky that I get to do what I do every day, which is a passion of mine. I love that I serve people. I love that I help people. I feel like I make a difference. I love it. I'm lucky to have a lot of health in my life. My children are all healthy. My family, my extended family are all healthy. I feel very, very grateful. But there's that driving force, that passion behind it all, that want to do it all is paramount to all that. If I didn't want to do it all, I wouldn't be doing it with the smile on my face and with a spring in my step. It wouldn't be as fulfilling for me as it is. And because it's so fulfilling for me, I bring everything to my classes. I love it. I genuinely love what I do. When I'm coaching somebody, I love seeing that spark of recognition and that sudden swell of energy as they begin to understand that they're the creator of their life. And as much as I'm helping them, they're also doing it themselves. Through the coaching practice, they begin to see that, I'm doing this. I'm taking these little steps on my own and I'm getting to where previously I never even thought I'd be able to get to, and then suddenly that achievement sort of step as well, that whole, oh, wow, I'm here type thing is it's very thrilling for me. And again, same thing with the yoga. I taught a lady this morning who has a buffet of physical problems. She has multiple sclerosis. She has a clot on her brain. She has diabetes. You know, she was a very active, loving part of her family and part of her world. And she now feels like everything's just shut down for her. You know, she's so immobile. She's in constant pain. And again, you know, to be able to help her after spending a couple of hours with her and talking to her and practicing yoga with her and doing pranayama and meditation. And she got up at the end of it. She was like, that is the most relaxed I've been in a very, very long time. And she was just, thank you so much. You know, thank you so much. And for me to be able to do that is amazing. But it's that passion that I have. And to be able to create those processes for people, to be able to lesson plan and to be able to, specifically for my one-to-ones, to be able to think about the needs of my client, think about what I can do for them, and then think about all the wonderful experiences that I've had, and then imagine that for them, enables me to really tailor make a class for them that is special, that is touching on everything that they've ever told me about themselves. Um, I'm very passionate about connecting in with my clients before I work with them. So like I did today with this lady, one of the reasons I was there for 2 hours was because we were talking about her life. We were talking about what's important to her, you know, the life that she's lived as well, the hardships that she's faced, the moving around and constant, you know, having family around her, and how important that is to her, how she loves to watch, you know, her family grow, but she feels like she can't be a part of it anymore because ultimately at some point it just gets too much for her. And all those things I need to be able to create a class for her, to be able to know on an instinctive level, on with my intuition, I need to be able to know who she is to be able to help her. I need to be able to read that in her a little bit. And that really, again, ignites a real passion for them being able to create a class for her that's going to benefit her specifically with all her needs, with all her experience, with all the, you know, the traumas and the trials and tribulations and everything that she was going through. And that's on all levels, from everybody, from the kids that come into my yoga class, from the adults that I do one-to-ones with, the adult classes that I have, you know, being able to tailor the class so that it balances through everybody. And so when you're stressed and, you know, not able to access that creative thought, what you put out becomes less valid, really. You know, it becomes less heartfelt. It becomes just less. You know, you can't give out as much because you're just not bringing it for yourself. I spoke in the first show that I did about how, you know, really looking after yourself is paramount to you being able to move forward in life. You know, putting yourself first is a real big need. And health-wise, you know, never more so than now, I think. You know, all the doctors and hospitals and everything in the UK are under such pressure. And I don't see it being much different anywhere else I go. Every time I go to Thailand, my daughter had like a swelling in one of her lymph glands under her neck, under her chin and in her neck when we went to Thailand this time. And I ended up taking her to our local doctor. And as always, the queues were out the door. You know, this is not, there are many doctors in Krabi Town. There's probably about 4 or 5 doctors, and they're all the same. You know, whenever you walk past any of them, they're all the same, absolutely jam-packed full of people from all ages with all manner of different concerns and worries and reasons to be asking the medical profession for help. But, you know, it's kind of, it's a little bit scary when you just think to yourself, wow, the whole place, you know, the whole world is getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Like the more I see, I remember going into the doctor's surgery when I was little and having to wait about 5-10 minutes before we saw a doctor, you know. And I remember then going in later in life and having to wait for a little bit longer, probably about 20 minutes. And then recently 12 years ago when I had my son and I went to the doctor and for my first prenatal appointment, I remember waiting 45 minutes and being quite honestly disgusted that I was having to wait so long for my doctor's appointment. The other thing that I think is so important about imagination is that imagination and thoughts create our future. It's what we believe we can achieve for ourselves. I think that if you can sit and think about really what it is that you love about life and what you would like to bring in more into your life and how you would like to grow in your life, and really imagine that, then it becomes a lot easier to be able to take steps forward. Like if you can imagine, for example, that you are a singer on a stage and you can imagine yourself standing there in front of 20,000 people, for example, and you can feel the tension around you, you can feel that that energy, that expectation, and you can feel all that, and yet still you can sing. That's got to be one very important step forward in the process in getting to be a singer, because you have to be able to imagine, the kind of the well, for me, the abject terror of standing in front of like 20,000 people and having to sing, and be okay with that, because that's part of the course. That's part of the course. You need to know that you can face these hurdles. Well, if you can sit and imagine them, and imagine yourself still breaking through those nerves and still pushing on through that energy, then you're going to be able to take that step when it comes to you. And okay, that's a little bit of an extreme, if you like, 20,000 people. But it's the same if you want to go and apply for a new job, or you want to get a promotion in the job that you're at the moment. You have to be able to imagine that you're going into your boss and asking for that promotion. You have to be able to imagine how that's going to go, what sort of things that they're going to bring up and ask you, what questions they might ask you, what relevant experience you might need to give. You need to be able to imagine a scenario so that you're prepared for it, so that you can go in confident to it. That's the best way to go into any interview, right? Is to be confident, to go in there and to know exactly what it is that you want out of it. But you have to have been able to go through some imaginative process to be able to draw on that. So I think creative thoughts and creative and imaginative thought in terms of your future are huge. You're huge in every level. I remember being pregnant for the first time and imagining pretty much every day what my child was going to look like. I was imagining him with like grey green eyes, dark hair, dark brown hair, the skin the color of canela. I had this imagination, like this imaginative thought, about my son, what he was going to look like. And I'm sure all parents do that before the little bundle of joy pops out into reality. And it gave me great joy as well to be thinking those thoughts, to be imagining what the future was going to be like with him, to be imagining what my life was going to look like with a baby in it, and not just joy, but confidence. It gave me, again, the ability to kind of have already second guessed it, to have, just a little bit of knowledge almost under my wing in an arena that I had actually absolutely no knowledge. So I think in that sense, it can be really quite comforting to have this imaginative thought as well. And obviously the other side of imagination is you can be imagining all the bad stuff, right? You can be imagining that you're going to go for that job interview and you're going to go and ask your boss for that job interview for the promotion. And they're just going to be like, absolutely not, so sorry. Yeah. And then where will you go? You're imagining the destitute nature, the desolation of being let down, the disappointment. You're imagining all those things. But in terms of a positive mindset, I think that imagination and creative thoughts are paramount to you being able to start taking steps towards the life that it is that you want to lead, the wishes fulfilled life, the kind of, this is what I want to do, that's how I'm going to get to it, job done, next. It also stimulates creativity and innovation. So you're creating your life. That's the creativity part of it. But the innovation part as well is being able to have little things just drop into you, being able to imagine a certain way and then take that in a different direction. When you physically go out and do something, when you begin to manifest something, everything comes to you and it's almost like building blocks going through your life. Before that process happens, when you're in the imaginary stage of it, you can bring into your reality, your imagined reality, different scenarios, different people who might work for you, different ways that they might help you. And you can again begin to build more and more into that sense of reality that you want to create. You can allow yourself to almost try things out before you actually need to buy things, to be able to try them out. You can imagine what that signage on the side of the van would look like. You can imagine how much attention you might get from it. You can begin to think like, okay, maybe if I did it this way, initially I imagine white writing on a blue van, but actually if I did white writing on a black van, would that not stand out just a little bit more? Would that not be just a little bit more potent? Or maybe the other way around, black writing on a white van. And in your mind, you can go through all these possibilities and begin to isolate the ones that are going to work best for you. So it gives you that opportunity when you sit and think and imagine, gives you that opportunity to be able to look at all the different all the different parallels of the same situation you could have, the same life that you want to lead. You could have blue van, red writing. You can have white van, black writing, black van, white writing. In your mind, in your imagination, you're creating all of this and it's coming in front to be assessed, to be brought forward into your consciousness so that it can manifest. And you get to choose at that level. I think innovative thought is going to become less and less in the world with the more distractions that we have in the world. That saddens me to say that, but that's actually what I think. I actually believe that creative thought and innovation will slow down in the wake of the absorbing nature of all the games and the movies and the TVs and the hours and hours and hours that we all spend on our smartphones and iPads and tablets and laptops and you name it. All of those things that are just stimulating you, are just showing you something that you can then absorb, don't require you to really give back anything else. And of course, that's what innovation is. It's that idea of being able to give back in a different way from anyone else. I'm not saying that it'll stop, but we're supposed to be coming into a generation now of kind of like indigo children, of crystal children, these kids who have lived before. This is like the general idea is that the consciousness of the planet is growing and growing and growing, and that with each growth we have more open-mindedness, we have more ability to understand from a higher level of consciousness exactly how the world is working and what we can do to change it, and hopefully be able to still have enough time to change it before we've mucked it all up. So the innovation is huge. Having said that, people are still getting stimulated. People out there they're still designing things. They're still looking for ways to be able to clean up the world and to be able to design amazing machines that will gather up bottles and turn them out the sea and then grind them all down into tiny little things that can be made into like asphalt for the roads. I saw that the other day and I was kind of like, wow, that's wicked, to be able to take all that stuff that's currently just going into landfill, or if they're being recycled into more bottles and more plastic bags and all that sort of stuff. How great would that be to just be able to turn something right around and use it immediately for the gains of, of everybody. It brings a sense of magic into our lives is my next note about it. Imagination is key to art. Absolutely. When you look at things like Harry Potter or, even James Bond, one of those two kind of big league genres of movie, their stories all come from imagination. They come from innovative thought. They come from creative thought. And it just shows when you look at a novel like Harry Potter, for example, it just shows you where you can take different stories. J.K. Rowling's written, 6 or 7 books, I think it is, with just this one central character who is essentially, a magician, and it's just all about him and his life. And yet so many intricacies, so many fine details. The imagination has really worked hard to be able to build this Harry Potter scene, this whole storyline, this book, this film, this, this theme park in this country. There's a Harry Potter world, and it it enables you to bring magic into your life. It enables you to see things a different way, see things that would, ordinarily be just, maybe it's just a flower or a plant or a leaf or something like that. And you see them all the time, and ordinarily you're kind of like, yeah. And, it floats on by. But when you bring imagination into it, you begin to think what else that could be. As I said before, you pick a flower head or something like that. Well, does it become a jewel? Does it become like a hair accessory? Will it become a ring on your finger by just tucking it in between in between the fingers? You can become a ring. Will it become a buttonhole thing? Will it become a symbolization of love? Will it become a weapon of mass destruction? Because whenever you drop this amazing flower, the pollen is so toxic that it will, infuse a nation with its toxicity. All that stuff comes from your imagination. All that crazy in the world, all the joy, all the beauty, um, all the stimuli, I suppose, that comes from, imagining things is so important to us. It's so important to us. It's something that we start out with before we get addicted to television and smartphones. It's something that we all start out with as children. And that's why play is so important for kids. And that's why it's so important not to give your 2 or 3-year-old a tablet in front of them, when you're sitting down to table and stuff, because, they need to be able to work their minds. They need to be able to develop and draw into their creative minds. To be able to play with your kids is one of the biggest gifts that you can give them, to spend that time with them and to be able to, share the way they see things, because your imagination is also going to be affecting your perspective and what you believe the world is. And that's really important as well. Going back to the fear mongering through media, and how it always keeps you in that level of thinking that, the world is not a nice place. But if you imagine the world is a nice place, then the world is a nice place. I imagine that every day, and I go out and I don't have any horrible experiences. I haven't had any truly horrible experiences for years, that have been down to other people. Um, and I think that that sense of magic as well is really needed in our society. It really is. Like it's that way of being able to move away from everything and believe in something else. Magic always kind of has a level of faith in it. You have to kind of believe. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly looking for the whys, the hows, the what fors. But to be able to believe in something when, you've been inspired and you've found your passion and you've created thoughts and you've imagined how it's going to be, and then to be able to actually believe in that you're constructing in your mind effectively, again, is the next step forward towards actually manifesting it, because it starts off as a thought and then you're going to verbalize it somewhere along the line, and then it's going to become something that you actually do because you've said you will, at the very, very least. Bringing a sense of magic into our lives counteracts fear. That idea that there's something bigger and greater than us really alleviates fear. It really gives you the opportunity to be able to take a step forward with your faith, whatever that faith might be. If it's a religious faith, if it's your own faith, your faith in yourself, faith in your family, faith in your career path, all those sorts of things. The another thing that I think comes off directly from that is, once you've got the faith in your imagination and the faith in what you can create, you can really begin to believe in what you're creating. You can believe that it will become real at some stage. And again, this is key with the details. Well, because once the details come in, you can actually see in your mind's eye, you can imagine in your mind's eye what that dream house is going to look like, what the picture frame is going to come out like, or the picture that you're painting is going to come out like. You can notice all those, and you can connect in with those. I think the more we lose imagination and creative thought, the worse off we'll be, for sure. What I wanted to also go on and say today is about the tools that you can use to hold your dreamed life safe for you. so that you can actually begin to work through it and begin to develop it step by step. I always say to my clients, let's go just pigeon steps at first. Great strides come later, but initially small steps. And again, like I say, we sit down and we really begin to imagine the life that you dreamed when you were a kid. My son's just about to start his GCSEs and they're asking him what subjects he's going to be wanting to do. And rightly so, he's kind of like, well, I don't know. What am I going to know what I want to do in about, 8, 9 years when I finish university and I finish college and I finish all those sort of things? How do I know what I'm going to do? I'm a completely different person than I am then. Then I'll be 21. Now I'm 12. How can I possibly make a decision that's based with what you're telling me the rest of my life on, the experience that I've had now? And I say to him a lot, you have to just imagine, love, what it is that you want to do. Look at what it is that you like to do now. Look at what it is, what you felt like you really gravitate towards and that you're good at and that you could spend time doing the whole time. And again, he's very much addicted to screens, I think. He won't admit it, but I think he is. And I say to him, what do you want to do? He's like, well, I'd like to become an actor and I'd like to, kind of doing a bit of singing or something, but I'd also like to be directing because I really want to get behind the computer and be able to do something, well, excuse me, that is tangible, that is, that becomes real. And so I ask him to sit down and to write it out what he wants, just to sit and think for a moment and think about what it is exactly that you want. Write it all down, draw pictures if you need to. And then let me know how you get on. So he will come back and he will say to me something like, okay, Mum, so I've been imagining what my life's going to look like. So I'm going to have this amazing car and 3 kids like you've had. And I want to be in a job whereby I can still see my kids like Dad still sees us in the evenings and in the mornings before he goes to work. And yeah, that's, give or take a few little oddities. That's pretty much it for him. And I say to him, okay, so what does it feel like to feel like you're going to be a dad, And he closes his eyes and he listens into what that feels like, the messages that he's getting from his heart. And he says, Mummy, it feels lovely because I know how much you love us. So my kids are going to have the same thing for me. Yeah, mission accomplished, job done, tick, thank you very much. But I think if you can begin to bring it more from your sense of reality, from your sense of imagination into your sense of reality, then that's when the magic happens. So there are things that we can do to help focus on our imagined ideas, because that's the other thing is everything that goes on here, it's so transient. 1 minute it's there and it's the best idea you've had in a long, long time. The next minute you've been distracted by something and you completely forgot what that idea was. And you ask your friend who's sitting there and she says, she says, well, I don't know. I don't know how do you want it to look? How do you want it to be, this world that you're creating? So you have to do that. It's down to your perspective. It's down to you and how you create. One of the ways that I like to create my dreams is to have a vision board. This started when I went traveling, or I was going traveling, and I would cut out pictures from the travel magazines. Do you remember you used to be able to go into a travel agent and get down like a little booklet or leaflet, a magazine style thing, a brochure on all the amazing places that you could visit? Oh, excuse me, sorry, I've been up very early. I was a bit jet lagged. And so one of the things that I like to do before I went away to Asia, before I went initially, was to go around and cut out all the pictures of the little places that I wanted to be and the names of the places so that I wouldn't remember them. And I created a little vision board, which was a huge, amazing, wonderful thing that I did. I loved it. Then when I got married as well, one of my friends encouraged me to do the same thing. She's like, look, just keep kind of like a scrapbook, but a memories book of everything you organize, of everything that you do. And I still have that book today, that it's upstairs with my photos. And it's, crazy to think that, one board, if you like, actually all happened, but it did. When I look back on it now, all the pictures that I had cut out of the brochures and stuck up onto this board, imagining Southeast Asia. 9 out of 10, I would say, of those pictures, I actually went and did. Obviously, I didn't take the vision board with me. I was backpacking. But 9 out of 10, I would say, for sure, we went and did. Or we're going back to do. Oh, pardon me. So I think, again, that's, a huge thing, is being able to put something out there and to be actually able to see it. It again stimulates the imagination to keep creating it as well, to visualize the next little bit. Now you know what house you're going to live in, or now you know which beach you're going to live next to. What's your house going to look like, or what's your car going to look like? How are you going to get from A to B? So vision boards are great tools to be able to use to focus on anything, whether it be a pay rise, whether it be a holiday, whether it be a lifestyle change, whether it be weight loss. It's that accountability. It's that constant reminder for you that this is something that you do. This is something that you're working towards. And when you can see it there, every morning when you wake up, when you can see it there, you're gently taking steps towards it. It's becoming into your comfort zone. It's being absorbed by you. I remember thinking about how I was going to travel, like what clothes I was going to wear, what shoes I should take, all those sorts of things. And then finding a little booklet with, it was, I think, like a Lonely Planet or something like that, but it was an old one and it was falling apart. And my friend had given it to me and she just said, look, I don't want it back, don't worry. So I picked it apart and I picked out all the photos and I picked out all the little sections from the photos on the other side, on the paper sides, saying what it was at this attraction, what was so good about it, excuse me, what was so good about it, what it was that I could kind of expect to be there. But again, being able to go back and look at that really kept me focused on my path. I soon bought my tickets, found out where I was going, went straight to Thailand initially, and then just traveled around really, finding, new places to put in my next vision board. But I went to every single one of those. When I came back home, I realized I'd been to every single one, even though I don't think I'd really linked up, joined up all the dots between that and where I actually went. I don't think my partner at the time, my boyfriend at the time, he had really seen where it was that he was going. He was kind of just following along behind me. And, we were kind of like tagging each other, try and do this, try and do that, let's do this, let's do that. And a lot of stuff happened and a lot of stuff didn't happen. But at least we were able to create that then. One of the other things, like I spoke about before, is asking my clients to write down how it would feel to be in that space. So, for example, you're, again, imagining that you are a successful businessman who is bringing in 120,000 a year, for example. And you know that that increase in your wage now would be amazing for you. It would be a game changer. But what would you do with it? How would it actually look? You want to go out and you want to get all these things, but how does it actually look? How does it feel when you bring it back? Does it make you feel content? Do you feel like you've done your best? Do you feel like you have moved out of one space and into another with it? Sometimes people can feel that their imagination is beginning to isolate themselves from the rest of the world, because everybody, if no one else is imagining, then we're all just going to be easily herded off as sheep, aren't we? But if people are imagining, then they're creating. And if they're creating, then this is a force that can't be reckoned with. This is a part of mankind that's truly, truly special. I think from imagining what that life would feel like and, step out in it, like using your feet to walk around with your eyes closed and walking around an imaginary house that you might have. That is tantamount to the first step of actually manifesting whatever it is that you want. The next step is going to be really living the life that you have seen yourself create. So, for example, if in your dream life you're wearing black trousers, black t-shirt and a white jacket, you've got black trousers, you've got black t-shirt, but you don't have a white jacket. And I think that you know, those sorts of things are really conducive to you being able to then go out and begin to manifest it. So for example, you might go then to a shop and buy a white jacket, and suddenly you are that person. You know, you've imagined what it was going to be like. You've already got the black trousers, you've already got the black top, you put them on, you just need the black jacket, the white jacket, you grab the white jacket, and actually it's another step taken forward. You're already there. Um, Again, the more detailed you can be with things like that, when you're writing things out for yourself, doing things out for yourself, the more detailed that you can be, the more real it all becomes before you're even there. And then as if by magic, or as if by the law of attraction magic, you know, you find yourself suddenly actually living in that life that you've written down, that you've done your vision board for, and experiencing it fully, experiencing the highs and the lows of that lifestyle that you've chosen. I think that, you know, if you can do something that you're really, really passionate about, then, you know, that's amazing. That's great. But for a lot of us, we don't. So for a lot of us, it's not just about the work that you do. It's about where you want to go to in life, what you want to achieve, what it is that you want, what is defines your success, you know, and then begin to build that up, because we all want to be successful. So we need to kind of think about what it is that we're going to need on our path to success. And for me, for sure, vision boards is one of them. You know, just being able to see and to stimulate me and motivate me and get me up and get me doing the things that I want to do, you know, is very, very important for me as a person. Um, Again, be detailed. I said, be as detailed as you possibly can be. Um, think about every tiny little thing. Like I say, how it would feel walking around your own house in the middle of the jungle with your feet, you know, what any feelings that you might get, any sensations, you know, taking that feeling into your hands and touching the world around you, you know, being connected and connective is a really rare and wonderful thing to be able to do. Um, when you connect in with somebody, you share your energy and they share theirs. So it's kind of like a little bit of a top me up. Um, and often, you know, it's it's the next stepping stone onto something else, which is really the next bit, you know, the next little detail. Um, Steps A to steps B in your imagined reality will be easier if you can put detail in all the way through. Okay, so just to take yourself from step A to step B and really imagine every part of that. So, for example, um, I will be I will be going to see my friend at the weekend. I'm just going to make an easy example. Go and see my friend at the weekend. I imagine that she will do me lunch. I imagine that it won't be something that my children will like because they're so finicky. Is that a word? Finicky. That's the right word. Um, you know, I can imagine that it would be a good idea for me to take sandwiches. I can imagine that they will like tuna fish and cheese. I can imagine what bread that they would best like to eat, and I will imagine that those bread slices have the crust cut off because none of them like that. That's stuff that I all imagined. Now, if I bring in the smell of the tuna, if I bring in the feel of the cheese as I cut it, you know, those sorts of things, then begins to make it a little bit more real. So you can do that with closing your eyes and just deep breathing into your stomach and out again, and just focusing in on what it is that you really, really want. You know, it doesn't have to be food. It can be anything. It can be the change in career path. It can be a partner. It can be getting rid of a partner. You know, there's lots of different ways of being able to really solidify this whole idea of imagination being creative within your life. So yeah, to be able to get from step A to step B, you need to be able to imagine all the little steps, all the little pitfalls that you might come across. Chances are they're not going to be there when you get there. But on the interim, you know, you imagine all these things to support your confidence and to support your knowledge going forward. Um, Role play is another fabulous way of being able to demonstrate this. And it's actually, I think, one of my favorite ways. You know, I've always loved to sing, and I used to dream about, you know, being up on a stage singing out to the world, until I kind of stood up in front of about 20,000 people and felt mute through fear. And that kind of killed that for me. But certainly role play within, like, again, the job interview scenario, the idea that, you're going to be a certain type of wife or husband or something like that, that you can imagine yourself in positions that you're going to need to imagine yourself in, and it doesn't phase you. It's like you have all these conversations in your head as well with your imagination, don't you? So you think about something, like, say I'm thinking about getting married, and I'll be closing my eyes and I just think about getting married, and I have all these different voices coming in. So what about my bridesmaid's dress? Oh, my bridesmaid's dress really, really fits lovely. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Have you got the cake? Have you got the venue? Have you got the flowers and everything sorted? And again, to be able to kind of role play through those things and to be able to see yourself doing them and then actually act them out. So I want to be a superstar, for example. I want to be a singer. I want to stand on stage looking a certain way. What do I imagine for me is going to be the best way to look when I'm on that stage? Right. So I go and get my jeans or my trousers. I go and get my top or my jumper, whatever it is. And I slowly begin to dress and work my way through the clothes and the way of life that I'm dreaming I'm going to live one day. And then suddenly you wake up and you realize to yourself, hey, hang on a minute, all those dreams that I had that I was going to live out in life, actually I've done it. That's me. I'm done. It's kind of happy days. Now now when you're doing role play, you can do like the talking, you can do the movements and all those sorts of things. But you can also involve other people into it as well. Excuse me, to make it more realistic for yourself, to make the energy exchange greater. So often role play in terms of interviewing for a job, for your new job or anything like that, it's often great to be able to do that with somebody else. And we do that in my coaching as well. And I'll pretend to be the interviewer, and my interviewee will tell me all the things that they're probably most worried about them being asked. And we'll go through all those sorts of things. And again, that, that imaginary thought that's attached to that is hugely important, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to imagine that I was that person and how they might react and, what it is that they might like to ask. I need to kind of go into a character and really find out all about it, a little bit of method acting type thing going on, and really finding out exactly how that character ticks and then emulating that round. It is a sort of massive skill. It really, really is. But I think we've got some good English guys and gals representing at the moment. So really, that's kind of it today. It's a little bit of a short one. I'm really, really tired. I don't know if you can tell from all the yawning and everything, but I just was one thing that really struck me towards the end of our holiday. And it's something that I do worry about with the kids, whether or not their sense of imagination and their innovative thought and their creative space is, so consumed by technology now that the amazing things that we as human beings can create won't get done. Everything will slow down. Everything will begin to stagnate. And that really makes me feel sad, because when I look at my 3 children, and in fact, most of the children that I come into contact with, I recognize that they have a huge something to give, huge, whether it be a talent, whether it be an ability, whatever it is, it's huge. And it touches and affects everybody, not least themselves. So to be able to kind of access your creative, imaginative thoughts and see where you could go with this talent, see where you could go with this ability, see where you could go with these words, is taking a step towards your destiny almost, not to kind of put too fine a point on it. So today's talk was really all about imagination and the importance of it. It's about realizing and recognizing that there are ways of you being able to keep the imagination running even when it feels hard. We talked about vision boards, writing down how it would feel, really write everything down how it would feel. I'm a huge advocate for expressing from the heart. And I think when you write stuff down, it's kind of like it comes through the body and it comes out beautifully. You must be detailed. Don't be general. Don't be one day I'm just going to have a ship. I'm going to have a boat. Be detailed. Within the next 3 years, I want my own, I don't know what, speedboat with a walnut finish, with a bright red handle, with the sort of one that we saw in James Bond films getting mashed up by huge propellers on ships and stuff. Once you've got all those things, then you can really begin to build the reality of your dream. The same thing goes with clothes and stuff like that. Every day I change it to something new. Every day I try to redress myself for the day that's coming, depending on the weather, depending on what I'm doing, depending on my time frames. But I think that really being as detailed as you can and drawing as much of your family's experience in as well, and everything that they'd have to go through, is really, really important. Next was note down the steps that get you from A to B. So things like going to the toilet, for example. If you are an Alzheimer's patient suffering from, going to the toilet, who needs to go to the toilet, then, you're not going to be able to imagine perhaps all the different ways of being able to get somewhere. You're going to need somebody to kind of ask you. I had this experience recently with a friend of mine who's going through this, and he's really suffering because the creative thought was one of the first things to go, and now he can't begin to even bring in or imagine where in this whole house that he used to know like the back of his hand, he'd be able to do something that feels so sort of primal to him as well. And that's, kind of been really, really sad to watch. And again, this is, something that I've been doing with him, is kind of just going around and making labels for things so that everything becomes detailed again. Everything becomes specific again in his life. Knowing where to be able to get things for himself is huge. Knowing where he can find the things that before he would have just gone and he'd know it's in there. And I keep the toilet rolls, for example, underneath the shelf in the bathroom. So now we have to sort of, put notes up downstairs. If he wants a toilet roll, on the front door of the toilet as well. If he wants a toilet roll, if he needs a toilet roll, then they're in the cupboard in the bathroom, which is the room to the right of him. And to go and look in the cupboard. And then, of course, on the cupboard door, there's toilet rolls are here, in big letters. And that's, that's just a small something that you can do to really begin to help build this creative thought, build this imagination, is to bring in all the details and make it very, very specific. And another thing to do, I think, is to keep it measured, to keep it so that you've got a timeline, when you want these things done by. You know that it's going to happen then within like the next sort of 6 months, for example. You know that you're going to be able to build it all up in your mind every day up until then. And things are going to change along the way. Just because you imagine one thing and you decide that that's actually the way that you want to live your life, always be open to change. That's, again, another creative thought, another idea that, there's no permanence to anything. So, and that in itself, along with imagination, are two very powerful aspects that we can draw on. So I'm sorry it's been so short today, but I am exhausted from all the travel and everything. I'll be talking to you again next week, directly and live, but I'm going to try and interview one of my friends who is amazing, an amazing coach for authenticity, to really begin to highlight the reasons why and the benefits to being truly authentic in your life, and how you can demonstrate that and how it brings you in. Because I think this is something else that I really feel passionate about. Being authentic, being the true you in this world is the greatest gift you can give the world. Believing that you should look like or be like somebody else is really a huge disservice to yourself and to your soul, and to everybody else. Nobody likes carbon copies of things. Machines make copies. People don't make copies, machines make copies. So it's important to be yourself 100%. So I'm hoping, if I can secure it, that next week will be with my friend for an authenticity chat on why it's so important, and why it is that you should be able to bring that into all aspects of your life, whether it be through your communications with friends and relatives and stuff like that, having the guts and the balls to be able to say exactly how you feel, or whether it be through your business, which, you know, is lacking something, and it's probably because it's not genuinely coming from your heart. So we're going to try and discuss that next week. Anyway, I'm going to be shooting off now, going straight to bed, and I wish you all a pleasant evening, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Thanks very much. Namaste.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lady Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination. You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level. Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.